Welcome to the Catholic Forge, a conversational podcast where we gather to explore our Catholic faith and discuss how it forms our lives. All are welcome to join in this conversation and journey. Thank you for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Eric in Missouri.
And this is Ben in Kentucky.
Well, I don't know where John is. He was supposed to be here, but as the title of this episode suggests, perhaps he's having quality time with Cecilia. I don't know.
Well, let's hope so. This is very unlike him, so hopefully nothing's wrong.
We have shared a bit of anxiety because he said he was going to be here, but he's not, and so John, if you're out there listening in the future, we were thinking about you. But we will try to carry on the best we can. This episode, quality time with your spouse. Now, first of all, what would make time spent together quality in the first place in your eyes? Ben, go.
Well, you don't know this, but actually I'm the perfect person to ask that question.
Oh, all right.
And I'll answer your question and then tell you why I know.
Please.
So I would think quality time is time that is focused and where you give the person you're with or the people you're with your undivided attention.
Okay.
And that's what sets it apart as quality versus just quantity or low quality. It's all about that focus and attention.
Sure.
And I know this. Have you ever read or heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages?
Oh, certainly. Yes, of course.
Which I may have mentioned on the podcast before. I don't remember.
I think you did, yeah.
Well, and it's been a lot of years since I read the whole book, so I don't even know how it would resonate with me today. But I remember liking it a lot. Alice and I read it before we got married, and one of the 5 love languages is quality time, which happens to be, and I took the little quiz, I read the chapters. See, it happens to be what mine is. Mine is quality time. So that's a very necessary thing for me to feel like I'm connecting with somebody or really, really nurturing the relationship. And that's why I know almost the textbook definition of quality time.
Well, first of all, I believe that you can take this quiz for free if you're out there in podcast land wondering, I wonder what my love language is.
I think you can.
5, the number 5, lovelanguages.com. And then right there, it says quizzes or profile. Jump into that and it'll take you through it and you can learn. I mean, it's not definitive, but
right.
But it certainly will show you a few things about yourself. And then you can check it out. And if yours is love language, or if your primary love language, if you're 1 out of 5 is quality time, then Ben, tell us about quality time.
Well, kind of like I was saying. So if your main love language is quality time, then that's how you like to receive love, and that's how you like to give love. And that goes for the other 4 also. People are most inclined, whatever makes you feel loved. It's quality time, physical touch. Yeah. Receiving gifts.
Gifts like words
of affirmation and acts of service.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. So
yeah. So
there you go.
And I find it really opened me up to who I was when I realized this, because there were countless times that I'd be at a gathering or be around people, or a family would be in visiting, and we'd spend hours. I mean, the quantity was there. We would have spent hours together, but then they leave and I'd make a comment like, I just don't really feel like I got to visit with them. And somebody else would be like, are you crazy? They were here for 6 hours. It was a great time. What are you talking about? And I just thought I was a little weird. And then I realized like the quality wasn't there for me. It was just a lot of quantity, but it was, maybe just small talk, or maybe a lot of just distracting, busy activity or whatever. And
sure.
And then, so we're kind of narrowing it down to with your spouse. So obviously, whether it's your love language or not, I think all couples, though. I mean, maybe you can speak to that, but I think it's still going to be a very important part of all marriages, even if it's not your primary love language. Wouldn't you say?
I would certainly agree. Although, since you took it that direction, kind of in light of the 5 love language quiz, test, whatever, I think that will tell you, whether you take the test or not, or the quiz, whatever, the profile, whether you find that out or not, I think that will, well, no, I'm sorry, I totally flipped in my brain what I was going to say. If you take the quiz and find out how your love languages in general break down, that will tell you a ton about how to make the time you spend with your spouse really great.
That's true.
You know, the kind of things that you want to do together. Now, I certainly am not going to come out and disagree with not Stephen Curtis Chapman. What's
Gary Chapman.
Gary Chapman. I wouldn't come out and disagree with him outright, but I can see other things being of quality, you know, shared between a couple where they do not necessarily have their full undivided attention on the other. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking, I guess an easy example would be, I don't necessarily feel that watching a show together is not a time of quality. Now, that being said, I guess it has a lot to do with like how you watch your show. I don't know how Alice is, if she likes to talk, you know, while you watch TV or not. She does not.
No. If I pause and talk too many times, it's bad news for me.
Oh my gosh. Tori and I, we just started watching a show, rewatching it the other day, and I started talking during it, talking about the show, you know, she got frustrated, and in my head I was like, we've already seen the show, literally every episode of it together. Why are you frustrated? You know, I was just teasing, I was just making fun, but you know, then I think we kind of shared more and talked and explored, and we're discussing it and the themes and all this different stuff about the show, and it was kind of delightful conversation. I don't know that it really carried us anywhere as a couple, but we were engaging, you know, through the medium of this television show, of this art or whatever it is. And so I get that. I just had a friend visit from Florida. He's on his way to Washington, and we had mentioned, you know, maybe going to see movies and stuff. And I told him, I said, you know, I don't want my time with you to be spent in a dark room where we're not looking at each other. And so in that instance, I know, like you said, we're trying to focus more on the relationship between spouses.
Yeah, that's all right, though.
In that instance, it was not going to be quality. And of course, you don't generally talk when you go to the theater, but like, besides laughing or screaming together at whatever's on the screen, you know, like there's no, like, I might as well just go by myself or with a stranger. You know what I mean? And I think you've got to, since you brought up that quiz, the profile, I think that knowing yourself and knowing your spouse, the more you know and the better you know them, will help you to form and shape the time that you do spend together. That's my initial impetus. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up TV because I think actually, again, like I said, it's been a long time, but it's stuck in my brain that he actually gave the example that watching TV together would not be quality time. And like you said, you don't want to disagree outright. But I think that might speak too to where it falls on your spectrum. See, Alice would agree. Quality time is not her primary love language. So she is fine if we only have a half hour in the evening to be together. She's fine if we spend that watching TV. She doesn't feel like she's been deprived or the relationship has been robbed in any way if all we did was sit and watch the screen together. Me, because quality time is such a high priority on my list there, while I enjoy watching TV, and a lot of times we will make that choice anyway, usually I got like a slight feeling when I'm falling asleep like, man, I didn't even see my wife tonight. And I sat right there by her. You know, we watched a show together, but it's like the quality wasn't there. So that's a good example to maybe that might that might be kind of a hint to somebody of where it falls on your spectrum of like if you're happy to watch TV with somebody, or if
Right.
you're always craving more, you're probably a quality time person.
And at some point in that conversation, or like that feeling that you had, laying in bed thinking, that was a fun show, but God darn it, then that might be sort of an impetus to go to your spouse and say, hey, I get it that watching TV is just kind of a nice way for you to unplug, but if we could at least, just take another step forward and have a little more engagement. One thing that Tori and I will occasionally do is if like we know we want to watch a movie, or in the case of this show I mentioned, we've already seen it. We've already seen it. And it's one that you kind of have to watch carefully, but really we don't need to. So we'll like play board games while it's on. So we're still interacting, but we kind of have the added benefit of getting to enjoy this story together. Now, for some people, that's too much.
Oh, my brain would explode.
Board game plus the other person plus a show plus we got the Catholic Forge on. It's too much, But
I'm a horrible multitasker.
Yeah. Okay. But you know what I mean? So we can bring in those extra layers where we want to actually face each other and interact on some level, but we still want to kind of enjoy the media outlet, make it work. Now, I will say, and this is like, this is a little taboo. Okay. So just hold on.
Do the kids need to leave the room? If you're in the car.
Take out the earbuds, put in the earplugs. Here we go. Okay. This is like... I'm not even going to say it. So I'm looking at all these websites. Just as we were talking in the pre-show, I was kind of running around and looking at these websites just to see what they said. I just Googled quality time with spouse, and there were lists and lists, Ben, on and on they went. And so few of them mentioned sex or, using some Catholic Forge language. The marital embrace, if you don't care for sex.
There you go.
And so, yes, at the Catholic Forge, we do recognize that sex exists. Okay. Fair enough. But I was kind of perplexed by this. And again, I didn't vet all these sites, okay, to see where they were. But it was curious that wasn't like at the top of the list. Now, already people are going to say at home, well, it's because if physical touch is not your primary love language, then how could, and they might be right. Although I think coming from a Catholic perspective where we value the marital embrace so deeply, I wonder if there's kind of like an overriding factor there. How would you view intimacy kind of in light of quality time? Does it add to it? Does it take away from it? What do you think?
No, I think hands down, it would be a form of quality time. It has to be. I guess the only warning is if it became a crutch, if it was like your only, and honestly, not to play into the negative stereotype of marriage, but I don't know too many couples that I've heard that that's the problem, that they have too much sex, or like that's the only thing they do together,
Yeah, sure.
Maybe you go back to our dating episode of premarital activity. Maybe you got some couples out there that's their only form of engagement with each other. But
sure.
So most married couples, I don't think that's really going to be an issue. But if it were, if that's the only way you could spend time together, for somebody who quality time was their love language, that may still leave them feeling a little empty of like, I just want to sit down and have a conversation now and then,
right.
Like really, really talk things out or something. So, but that aside, I think, absolutely. It's quality time, and maybe even it's like a hierarchy of its own, or a category of its own. It's like the umbrella maybe over all of the other love languages, or I don't know what analogy we want to use, an umbrella, or maybe it's the glue that all the other love languages are stuck together with.
That was didn't Christopher West say that sex is the glue for a good marriage or something like that?
It's very possible.
I may be misquoting. I'm sorry, Christopher, if I did, but I would agree. One thing that I kind of quickly shared and I want to bring back is that in light of sex, in light of the marital embrace, and I would say I feel this honestly, is that if the time you're spending together is not satisfactory, or if you feel that you've kind of been drifting apart for whatever reason, I mean, it could just be busyness or naturally children,
Yes.
because if you ever wanted to have less quality time with each other, have kids. Because they will become a black hole in your life that will swallow. I mean, I'm teasing, of course, but you know exactly what I mean. And actually, it was corroborated by so many of these websites where 8 out of 10 things they recommended would be not always, but mostly impossible or improbable for a couple with children. But if you got to that, going back to intimacy now, if you felt that you were drifting away, that you were falling away, I mean, I won't say anything crass, but return to the marital embrace, since that is so fundamentally critical to our very real connection with each other. It's sort of the font from which so much of that flows. I think you're onto something there. I don't think we should go too much further with it just for the sake of time, but I think you're onto something that the marital embrace does sort of kind of represent all of those love languages and its many mysterious facets. But I think you're also really right that it may not, for some people, and really probably for all people, replace whatever. Even if your strongest love language is physical touch, I suspect that sex would not completely replace the yearning within, that desire for something else, because everyone wants to play games and watch Star Wars. Ben, please, and of course, that doesn't facilitate that. I think that's a really great insight, Ben. I would like to think more about that later, when we do a sex episode, a sex episode.
Yeah, and like you said, we won't go too far into it, but men have the stereotype that they don't need sex for any kind of emotional level, but it's all just physical, and that's a lie. Like a loving husband, he still needs that level of physical connection with his wife and the emotional connection that it yields, and so it's equally important to husbands. Now, I can't say that's the case for all husbands, of course,
sure.
But I think, speaking for me and you and John and any honest guys that are listening to this, yeah, definitely a form of quality time. And I think you led into another, extremely important point: the kids. That, yeah, they're wonderful, and I can't imagine my life without them. But it makes it very hard.
But that's right. There's
to have quality, because think back to that textbook definition: undivided attention and focus. How can you give your wife undivided attention and focus when you've got 2, or I was really hoping John would be here because he could speak to having 5 kids in the house and trying to have quality time with your wife when you've got 5 kids. We only have 2, each. So it's hard enough with 2. And I can't count the nights. And you don't have to air your own laundry if you don't want, but share if you want to.
Sure.
I can't count the nights that the day has ended and I've told Alice, like, man, does it ever feel to you like sometimes we're just like roommates who've been given the task of keeping this house afloat, and it's just all about the work, all about the chores, and like
in the commercials where it's 2 a.m. and the husband and the wife pass in the hallway and high five each other.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, like.
That was never how. Granted, when they're little babies, but I absolutely understand what you mean. Yes, please.
Yeah, and for the quality timers out there like myself, that's when you start to feel run down and just like, where's my spouse? Or I don't even know one deep thought that my spouse has had in the last 2 weeks. It's all been just kind of like household maintenance, keeping things running, and it's easy to fall into that and let's not forget fatigue too. You're just tired, and that's where the TV option comes in. You're both tired. Quality time takes effort. It takes a little bit of thought, maybe a little bit of planning to set that time aside. To even, you mentioned games, playing a board game. I know that sounds crazy, but have you ever been too tired to play a board game where you didn't feel like focusing on the the strategy or whatever.
What do the dice say? Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah.
I don't feel like counting to 6 right now.
Tori and I, we play video games every now and then. We just finished a delightful game called Overcooked. It's on PlayStation 4. I think it's on Steam as well.
Okay.
And you play as little chefs and you run around and you cook things. And like and like I have to like it's
Sounds
all
ridiculous.
it's just a riot. And so like all the levels are built on like a cooperative basis. And so one person will have to cut the vegetables for the soup and the other person has to run and get the vegetables after they're cut and take them to the pot. And then it cooks, and then you have to bring the pot back to the counter because the other chef has the bowls. Then they plate it, and then they take it to the serving window. It's just delightful. And actually, it was just what we needed, on those nights that you just described, where I was late at work, or I'd finished the podcast, or recording, or I was editing, or she had to run, or she was working late, or whatever it was. And when we finally got together, it was like, oh, I don't want to watch a 45-minute show or an hour-long show.
Yeah.
I don't want to listen to a podcast together. But you know what? 20 minutes of Overcooked would be great. And so we jump in, we laugh, we strategize, we're yelling at each other. and we have a good time. And so I, but one thing that I try and do every now and then is I'll ask Tori, what do you want to do tonight? And I really should get a little more advanced in my notice about this kind of stuff, but I'll try to sort of talk it out with her like during the day when I'm at work and she's at home. I was like, hey, what do you want to do tonight? And I would just suggest that. I didn't take enough time to bring back the Catholic Forge 5, but we could have for this episode. But I would simply suggest and recommend that if you're able to do any kind of advanced planning, and you can come to those plans together, I think that's really helpful because then you have something to look forward to, and then and whatever it is you're going to do, you can kind of just put that hype in there. And I also wanted to just affirm something that Ben said, and you actually said it in a different way about a different topic in the prayer episode about setting an environment for prayer where there is not the slightest worry that you will be interrupted. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Really, that was a Catholic Forge moment, if there ever was one, for me. And there have been several of them, but that was a man against man, iron against iron moment, because I had never thought of it that way. Never thought of prayer that way. And I would suggest, granted, your children should not be sedated to that point, but you should try to establish that, like, make sure the kids are to bed and they are in bed. I mean, they are asleep,
right.
Just so that you said it, that you can give as much of your attention to your spouse as possible, that you've unloaded all of the baggage for the day, that you are wholly hers, and to your knowledge, she is wholly yours in mind and body and soul, even if you only have 45 minutes, for an episode of Strange Things, because that was shorter than that, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and to that point, and this, I think we have talked about it and want it to be an episode of its own, so we won't go too far, but to that end, that might mean turning off phones.
Oh, the phones, right.
Because as long as that phone is sitting there on the couch next to you as you are talking or playing a game or whatever, the entire world has access to your living room at that moment. I mean, any friend, any family member, they can just beep their way right into the moment, and then you've got a choice to make. Well, I just heard the chime. Do I look at it? Do I see who it was? And then depending on what they said, is it going to trigger me to, have to respond in that? And then if you each have your phone and it's just devolving into, it's no longer really quality time. Now, each couple, they're at a different place with their phone usage. Mm-hmm. So one couple might agree that, they'd rather not speak to each other than have to give up their phones for the night. So maybe it's best they keep their phones on. Like me and Alice, when we're home, and we're kind of good with the detaching from the world for a couple hours. So each couple might have a different take on that.
Well, you have steam-powered phones that have to be...
if we run out of coal, I can't even receive a call.
Oh, my goodness. For what it's worth, to that end, my phone never makes noise unless I want it to. ever. Never.
That's good.
I mean, it can be an Amber Alert and it will not make noise. I mean, everything, as soon as I install an application, the first thing is to disable all sound. The only time it ever makes noise is when I set my alarm clock, in the morning. That's it. And that's intentional. So at least then I don't have an audio cue calling out to me, Eric, there's a text message for you. It's at least I have that much. So I know if I put it in the cupboard or anywhere out of my visual field that I'm that much more detached to it. I agree. I struggle with this profoundly for myself and otherwise. Because it is hard to just set them aside. But you're right, it can be so disruptive and so challenging. And so I think I said I didn't do the Catholic Forge 5, but I think we've given like 5 pieces of advice here, just about. That would be something else too, is one, talk about it, of course. Discuss the use of phones in your dynamic, And yeah, sometimes you're right. For some people, just sitting there and you're tweeting away or Instagramming away, whatever, not a big deal. But other times when you really want that person's attention, say, look, one night a week, 2 nights a week at 9 o'clock, the kids are in bed, they're sedated, they're going to make it through the night. We're going to put our phones on top of the fridge, and then from 9 to 11, that's it. We're gonna get to it. Just agree to that, and then just try it and see how it goes. And it may, frankly, if you are in the condition of using it so often as so many are, it may be uncomfortable. I know that I would feel a little uncomfortable, and that sometimes, frankly, I'll just tell you tonight, I'm gonna be thinking about what happened to John. He's just going to say that he was hanging with Cecilia, and that's fine. But, when Tori and I are hanging, I'll be like, go check my phone and make sure John's okay. Needn't worry about that at all. So really it's okay. It is okay. Let me just tell you, it is okay to put the phone away, please.
Yeah. It's such a modern phenomenon anyway. I mean, that people have to be in touch 24/7. I mean, the world will survive for 2 hours if you and your wife take a break to play a board game or watch a movie uninterrupted. Like nobody, because if it's that big of an emergency, you probably don't have the skills to fix the situation anyway. I mean, they're going to be calling a medic or rushing to the ER. You're not going to be the first person that needs to be on the scene anyway. So an hour and a half later or 2 hours or whatever, when you check your phone, you'll get the update, move on with your life. But like you said, we've thrown out several tips inadvertently. This isn't for everybody. It's kind of a granny hobby in a way, but me and Alice, jigsaw puzzles are also a great way. And the reason I like them, because I said I don't multitask well, they are slow paced. They don't demand, they're not a fast, and I can completely carry on a conversation while searching for that spot that the piece I'm holding in my hand goes.
Yeah, sure.
It's very easy to talk while doing it.
You put the Catholic Forge on, you do the puzzle.
Yeah, you can even have some audio.
But how do you keep children from swallowing the pieces? I mean, and do you break it down? Or do you do like 25-piece puzzles?
No. Actually, just recently, because Alice, she's really the puzzle lover, and she kind of got me into
the maven of puzzles.
Yeah.
Is that the correct word? I'm going to check that word. I'm going to fact check myself.
I don't know. But we had to come up with a solution for that because of what you just said. Like, okay, our options are only ever do puzzles that we can finish in one sitting. Which is
like 100 pieces maybe or whatever.
Yeah, not many. Or figure out a way. So I kind of came up with a solution. I got a piece of like 2x4 super thin like birch plywood. Very lightweight. Doesn't cost much. And that is our puzzle board. So you can lay it on your kitchen table or wherever you want. You start your puzzle on it. And then if we don't finish it, we can slide the whole thing under the couch or under the bed or whatever on the board as is and just resume it another time. Kids never even see it. Don't know it's there. They also make these roll-up mats that you do a puzzle on, supposedly kind of like a yoga mat. You roll it up, but I don't know.
How big is the board? I'm having a hard time visualizing this.
Oh, this one I've got 2 feet by 4 feet. So I mean, you can put a big puzzle on it.
2 feet.
Why? Yes, that's a rectangle.
So it can go through a door. Got it. Okay.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
I'm not great with geometry.
With dimensions.
My parents always said, you'd be really good at geometry because I was so bad at algebra. I'm awful at both. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a slow jam. You can just enjoy together. It's cooperative, but it leaves a ton of room for interacting. I think that's, my dad's folks, grandma and grandpa, they always had the puzzle going. And if you came over to talk or whatever, you were at the table, hanging, get the coffee going, whatever it was. And then it was always like, let's work on the puzzle. But they were like, it was fierce with them. It was fierce. And I can't confirm Maven, an expert or connoisseur. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. So to talk at their house, you had to complete at least 20 pieces of the puzzle to kind of like a buy-in on the conversation.
Well, you haven't met your quota yet, son. So you better work on it. That's funny. That's funny.
I'll answer your question once you find that piece.
My gosh! Right, very good. Well, any Ben, this has been great. I think very insightful.
Yeah.
Any kind of capstone thoughts for the time?
I don't know if it's capstone, but for me, and again, I'm biased because quality time is important to me. But for me, it's just such a special thing, and the reason I'm so complimented when I receive that quality time. Actually, this is going to take it on a little bit of a morbid turn, so stick with me. It's got a nice sentiment. We're all going to die one day. Our time is a non-renewable resource. Like money, especially if you got a good job. Money, you keep making more of it. You can throw it wherever you want. But your time, you don't get that back. You can't make more of it. You don't even know how much you have. So when you give somebody your undivided attention, an hour of your time, whatever, you're literally giving them your life. That's kind of your lifeblood, your time, So maybe that's overly sentimental, but for me, that's why it's so touching to just have someone's attention. And it's like there's an entire world out there, but right now, they're just spending their time with me, doing something with me.
Well, that's one more way that the Beatles are wrong. Time is not on your side, but I have enjoyed this quality time with you, Ben. And
Rolling Stones. That
was the Stones?
I think. I only correct you so somebody else isn't screaming at us, but I think it's the Stones.
I think you're right, too. This has been the Catholic Forge. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. We really appreciate that. And we'd like to close, as always, with a prayer and a blessing. May God the Father,
God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit bless you, guard you, and lead you to eternal life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you for listening to the Catholic Forge. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and will leave us a positive rating and review on iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube. Please continue the conversation with us on Facebook and Twitter. And to get a hold of us, you can reach us at thecatholicforge@gmail.com. Share with your friends. For more information regarding the podcast, visit our website at thecatholicforge.com. We especially thank our quality wives. I almost got all the way through it. Our quality wives.
Yeah. They give us quality lives.
They do. Yeah. Happy wife, happy life, quality wife, quality life. We thank them for their support, and we thank you very much for listening. Thank you for listening to the Catholic Forge. We hope you've the forge?
The fortress.
Thank you for listening to the Catholic Forge on the porch. I'm gonna try again. Let's start again.